Welcome to the Canadian Arctic. This is a part of Canada that many Canadians, frankly, don't think a lot about. But our adversaries are thinking about this land. This is a special looking at Arctic sovereignty and what we're doing to protect our land. Canada's military is stretched, not enough soldiers.
Today the mission is to insert OP India 11 Charlie.
Not enough equipment.
All right, let's do it, people.
In an increasingly dangerous world. For years, we've relied on the Americans to jointly respond to threats in the north. But our once closest ally has become ever more unreliable.
And starting engine number 2.
And so here, in the Arctic, the Canadian Armed Forces are showing the country and the world how they'd respond by land, air, and sea to threats in the Arctic. It starts with the Navy. This is Operation Nanuk.
Command 25 west.
As the alert comes in,
This Canadian warship 433, roger, over.
the Canadian Navy ship bursts to life. We are on board HMCS William Hall, high in Canada's Arctic waters, remote, stunning, and often unforgiving.
Do we have any indication they're more on the southern side versus the northern side?
No indication, but we'll be able to clear this as we're going.
An aging Air Force surveillance aircraft has identified an unknown small vessel plying these waters. All this a simulated exercise to assert Canada's Arctic sovereignty, something more important now than perhaps ever before. The Navy, Air Force, Army, and Coast Guard have gathered to practice what is considered a likely threat. A suspect boat potentially approaching sensitive military sites here, possibly involved in espionage, even sabotage.
So you get tasked with this. How do you actually proceed now?
So now that we've been tasked for it, we're going to go and take a look and try and find this person. We don't know exactly what is the reality, so we have to go and confirm the information that we've seen. So we're given that, as well as what other assets that we have available to us.
Follow with us.
It's up to Commander Scott Kellerman to locate the boat and the people on board, a needle in a vast Arctic haystack.
We're talking about a period of about 100 square miles, so it could be something that could be very challenging to find. It's actually why having an air asset like the Canadian Coast Guard helicopter is vital. Air power is an important part of finding things in an area that's that wide.
A challenge in an area vital to Canada's future. Much of the country's economic prospects rely on defending our control over the Arctic. So as part of an annual operation in the north, soldiers from southern Canada come to the Arctic, dropped on mountains for days at a time. It's one part rehearsal, one part survival, and one part surveillance. Well, we have satellites and other detection equipment to figure out who is in our waters. A lot of that is quite old, and so they still use people to watch out for ships and strangers who are passing through our Arctic waterways and lands. For nearly 80 years, Canada has relied on the local know-how of the red-coated rangers to help patrol this territory. They live here, so it's a permanent presence. Many are Inuit, intimately familiar with the land and water.
They need to know how to survive out on the land.
At 71 years old, Titus Alulu of Pond Inlet, or Mitimatalik, has been a part-time ranger for close to half a century.
Our job is to be in our area to observe and to listen and to see. If we see anything abnormal that isn't supposed to be there, we report it to headquarters.
A sentinel standing on guard for Canada in the north.
For this patrol, I'm sergeant. That's the highest rank you could go.
In the Rangers?
In the Rangers.
Inuit people have generations of experience watching over this land, but have not always done so voluntarily. For years, thousands were forcibly relocated across the north so the federal government could lay claim to land here.
The ship Arctic took them to Ellesmere Island. They didn't know they were going.
Titus's mother, seen here on the right, was among those moved further north without notice in the 1920s.
My grandparents were moved from this beautiful place between 1918 and 1921. The ship came 4 in the morning, or they were out this way. They were left with kayak, traditional kayak, dog team, sealskin tent. And he was given a uniform, RCMP uniform, to a place where he did not know. He's never been there. He didn't know what the animals were.
Why were they moved?
Probably sovereignty. Up in Ellesmere Island. That's across from Greenland.
You're describing a situation where your grandparents were forcibly moved by the government of Canada so that the government of Canada could say, we have sovereignty over this part of the world. That's a human flagpole.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
I don't know. I mean, it's a big feat to go from this pristine area that my grandfather knew what to look for, to in terms of keeping his family alive, feeding them, feeding his family. Yeah.
Stories passed from generation to generation contained trauma.
Our CMPs are looking for my grandfather's grave.
Embedded with a distrust for government and those who would represent it. And so for Titus to have served as a Canadian Ranger, a member of the Canadian military since the 1970s, ought to tell you about what he's had to overcome.
The Inuit First Nation and the Métis organizations, community members, their knowledge is unbelievable. So without them, we would have never been able to do the job that we are doing.
Yusuf Mani is the Coast Guard's most senior official in the north.
So yes, we need ears and people or foot on the ground in order to do the job.
The Arctic is facing enormous change. A warming climate means more shipping, and with that, more nations planning to send vessels through Canadian waters.
When we say traffic, the word traffic comes with the word risk.
There is the risk that other countries may take a great interest in this region because of critical minerals, because of the shipping routes.
The geopolitical, we cannot ignore it for sure. So I think what we need to reflect is on the fact that as part of our mandate or the future mandate, for sure we are a key player on the security aspect.
We've seen attempts by foreign governments to buy things that might as well seem innocuous, like some old abandoned factories or mining or things like this, as a way of trying to establish a foothold in the Arctic.
Stephanie Carvin once worked for Canada's national security establishment. She's now a professor at Carleton University and says some see Canada's waters as either theirs or open territory.
So when China, for instance, runs a research vessel through our waters with our consent, is that actually a vessel doing research, or is there a military purpose?
China is, of course, interested in the Northwest Passage as a potential shipping route, but obviously it's also interested in some of the resources that are in the Arctic as well, right? There's a lot of natural resources. It has an ambitious plan to basically control a lot of the rare earth elements in mining and wants to invest in the Canadian Arctic. So there are concerns that, for example, that some of the practices that China does when it comes to, natural resources mining is really an attempt to establish effective control.
This is not some far-fetched scenario. Just this summer, Canada launched surveillance aircraft to monitor the Zhulong 2, a Chinese vessel whose government says is for research, but is believed to have a military application. An independent researcher also tracked a Canadian Coast Guard vessel, mirroring the Chinese icebreaker's transit. While last summer, it was Canada's Navy shadowing a Chinese vessel.
These research vessels have a wide range of purposes, some of which may not exactly be in Canadian interests.
For example, another Chinese vessel crossed Canada's Northwest Passage in 2017. It would be capable of mapping the sea floor to create plans for future surreptitious travel by Chinese submarines, as well as to identify vast critical mineral reserves in the Arctic. It's not just our traditional adversaries either. President Trump has spoken about taking over not just Canada, but Greenland.
We really need Greenland for national security.
Greenland also has vast critical and rare earth mineral deposits. Could our once closest friend now be a threat to our Arctic? It's a question openly contemplated now. Back on the water.
We have located the VOI. We will be closing it in the next 90 minutes.
A Coast Guard helicopter has spotted that suspect vessel, part of the scenario playing out.
That kind of island right there, there's a cove that's an inlet that goes inside, and it's inside that inlet.
You guys can gather in. Okay, so we're here. Pure Transmitters is up here. This is where the VOI was located. Be ready to be in the air probably 12:45 for when launches. I'm not sure number of persons. That wasn't reported by the helo, so we're still going by our intelligence of 5 to 8 personnel, nationality unknown, no weapons except for bear control. Any questions?
The Navy ship gets set to deploy its fast boat, and we're along for the journey as it sets off through the fog to interdict what is believed to be suspicious activity. When we come back, we go inside the takedown.
So important to ensure that
and hear from Nunavut's premier on what his territory needs to stand on guard. Pond Inlet, Nunavut, known locally as Mitimatalik, the fourth most northern civilian community in all of Canada. Off its shores, more and more ships ply these waters, open for more of the year as the Arctic warms, increasing fears of what would happen if a ship cracked open, leaking fuel, oil, or chemicals into this pristine environment. It's a disaster that Canada's Coast Guard here is practicing for, pulling a protective boom which would contain a spill of certain kinds.
What is the risk if you can't contain?
Of course, in the Arctic, as you probably know, there's minimal resources and infrastructure, and so the impacts of a large spill or potential pollution event in the Arctic could be very significant.
And change the livelihoods of the people who live up here.
Well, and have very significant impacts on the environment, definitely.
Sue McLennan is the Coast Guard's Director of Response in the Arctic.
When we look at the changing nature of the Arctic, is there just a higher risk of everything happening now?
We certainly are seeing increases in vessel traffic, and for the Canadian Coast Guard, that means a need for hyper-awareness and more likelihood of incidents in the Arctic. Certainly we don't see the same amount of traffic as they get down south, but as we see that increase, it means potential risk of more search and rescue requirement, more environmental pollution requirement, and just our general presence.
It also means that response time could be days at least. It's why ships are required to carry their own protective equipment and deploy it should they leak or spill contaminants. The question, though, is whether cargo vessels would actually do that, especially in such a vast area where it may seem few are watching.
Zoom out, pull it up.
Even in summer, on the bridge of HMCS William Hall, one of the Navy's newest vessels, the crew must watch for ice.
Went back with the tide.
Sub-Lieutenant Eric Muir-Cressman says vessel traffic up here has exploded with climate change, warming waters, and melting ice. But it's also made ice more unpredictable, and with that comes risk.
That it's so random where the ice actually is, converging and forming, that those routes that used to be fairly consistent, like you can get through here at this time of year, they're jam-packed with ice. Or one that you thought was closed is completely open.
Yeah. With less ice and easier navigation, dozens of cruise ships, often with foreign passengers, appear every few days in the summer and early fall. Mariah Erklu wants to ensure those who come here are greeted by locals.
Having locals shape how the visitors come here, how the visit goes, like how long the visits are, making sure the wildlife are not disturbed because it's so delicate.
And the community is compensated for its services, especially valuable in the territory with Canada's highest unemployment. She feels the same about Canada's armed forces.
Seeing the military here and seeing how many Inuit are involved, like how many people have come on from other communities and practice their exercises, to me, I feel safe because people are working together.
She also sees big changes in her homeland. More people, more ships, more visitors. And with it all, a need for more protection.
As Nunavut continues to grow, security is, of course, a big one, but it's like so many things are like happening at the same time. We have to make sure that they're growing at a rate that we can sustain it. And because too much of anything is wrong, right?
Investigating whether something is wrong is exactly what the Navy and Coast Guard are doing. A simulation of how they'd locate a suspicious small vessel that switched off the beacon, allowing it to be identified. The latest info suggests people on the boat have moved onto land.
So that vessel that's going very fast there now has the RCMP on board, and they're going to go to intercept and possibly arrest those on shore.
As the boat pulls in, a group of Inuit point out the suspicious people. In reality, they're Coast Guard personnel playing the part of a bad guy. The Mounties move in.
Why'd you run?
And make an arrest. Then load the suspects into the boat.
What did you find on them?
He had a handgun, a restricted firearm, Russian military intelligence identification, and drugs on his person.
All right, so the trifecta, basically.
It was full meal deal, yes, sir.
Yeah.
This practice scenario may seem far-fetched, but those close to national security circles think something like this could indeed happen.
We are trying to arrange an air evac via helicopter Griffin.
It's why they're practicing. What if an adversary approached some of the sensitive, unmanned military sites in the remote north?
From here in Eclipse Sound, Nunavut, we turn to the person who is charged by the Canadian Armed Forces with protecting the entire vast north, which is most of the landmass of this country.
The first step is to observe. And how we observe, there are so many different ways of observing with the new technology that we have. We can put together land forces, air forces, maritime forces.
Brigadier General Dan Riviere is the commander of Joint Task Force North, a permanent presence of 300 soldiers and civilians watching over 40% of Canada's entire landmass.
So here we are, General, in the north. What is the threat here?
There's no conventional threat that I can speak of, okay? So the scenario of conventional landing and invasion here is it's not realistic. The threat is more about climate and its effects. It's a fight for survival before anything else.
Could another nation, for military or other purposes, run a vessel through these waters without us knowing?
I don't think that would be possible. We track everything that moves.
Subsurface, submarines?
I would have to defer the question to Navy, but I don't think it could happen with all the observation equipment that we have.
Larger ship traffic is monitored from here, a Coast Guard operations center in Iqaluit. But smaller vessels could more easily evade satellites and other surveillance. A couple of blocks away from the center, we head to Nunavut's legislature, a spectacular space filled with Inuit art, to meet the territory's outgoing premier, PJ Akiagok.
We've had so many ambassadors from countries around the world come talk about the possibilities of wanting to see how we could work together.
Interested in getting a piece of what the North offers.
We've really done our part in terms of asserting our sovereignty, whether it's through land use, whether it's through occupancy, to the vast part of the country that very few Canadians actually get to see firsthand, But the important part is that we've really done our part, and I think we're starting to see some conversations around what we could do to make our communities much more vibrant.
For instance, there is talk in Ottawa of an Arctic economic and security corridor, roads and fiber connectivity to the rest of Canada, boosting internet access and thus economic opportunity.
Whether it's nation building, whether it's access to deep sea ports so that our resources could come to market, or whether it's really bringing down the cost of living that you see so significantly across the Arctic.
We talk about Arctic sovereignty, and you're also talking about the well-being of communities. I think what you're saying is there's an equal sign between those two things.
They go hand in hand. You need healthy communities to assert your sovereignty. We've struggled, whether it's the lack of housing and the housing crisis we've tackled since then. We've really have put significant investments to bring partners in to actually build, for the first time in our history as a territory, homes in every community.
They will be airborne in 10 minutes. Over.
Back with Operation Nanuk, one last drill, a medical evacuation in one of the most remote parts of our country. Stay with us.
This is my first time coming to the Arctic.
What do you think?
It's a very beautiful landscape. It's incredibly remote. The environment's unforgiving, but the scenery is it's breathtaking every day.
Indeed, Nunavut is enchanting. The people, the places, and as we wrap up our time on Canada's annual military Operation Nanuk in the far north, there is one more practice scenario thrown at soldiers at the last second. After those simulated arrests, the RCMP determined somebody had a simulated injury. And out here in this vast area, there are very few options on how to get an injured person out. So they called in Canadian Armed Forces Griffin helicopter, which has landed on the beach to take away the injured person to further medical care. Once safely landed on the rocky landscape, medics bolt from the helicopter to assess and treat the practice casualty before carrying him on a stretcher. It lifts away, up and over snow-capped mountains, revealing the enormity of the land and sea and underscoring the task of patrolling and protecting it.